What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm the Croc Neck.
I'm Jamin John.
And we have an album review for you, and one that we have both been eagerly anticipating. I've been a longtime fan of this band, and I will say that this is the only death metal band that should have a residency in Cairo at some casino or resort. Either way, they should be there. We're going to go over the latest offering from Nile. The Underworld Awaits Us All. This comes out on the 23rd of August on Napalm Records. This band formed in 1993 in South Carolina. This is their 10th full-length offering. I have been a fan since In Their Darkened Shrines. I remember seeing a review in it, and I was like, man, this sounds pretty awesome. And then I picked it up and like, oh my God, this is the fastest album I think I've ever heard. We actually went over their last album, Violent and Electric Rights, when it dropped back in, 2019. That was a while ago.
Yeah.
And that one marked a big change in terms of the lineup, namely Dallas Toller Wade had left the band to focus on his project, Narcotic Wasteland, and Carl was pretty much rounding out his new lineup. I mean, except for, George Callias, he is 100% still there, and believe me, you can tell. But even as recent as this year, there have been some lineup shifts from the last album. Namely one, Dan Vandem Vaughn of Morbid Angel. He's their second guitarist in Morbid Angel. He is playing bass and doing vocals on this. And Zach Jeter of the band Olkoff, which sounds a lot like Nile. They're also from South Carolina. And he steps in on guitars and vocals as well. In fact, the only person not doing vocals on this album is George Callias.
And rightfully so, although I believe he could do it. I believe George Callias is capable of literally anything on those drums, including death growls. He could probably tap dance. He could likely juggle while playing. I've been a long-time Nile fan. One of my buddies way back when got me into Nile with Black Seeds of Vengeance, and I just never stopped listening. And then Annihilation of the Wicked came out, and that record became one of my absolute favorites. In fact, still to this day, I could jam that record at any given point and be just fine with life.
I jammed that album today on my way to get this album, and I'll be honest, right out of the gate, point blank, I think this might be the best Nile album since Annihilation of the Wicked. There is something about this album that feels tighter, more sinister, more dynamic, more everything. Like more Nile, but also more stuff on top of that than I think I've heard in a while from this band. And that is not to say any of their previous albums are bad. I don't think Nile really has a bad album. They have some ones that are not as well produced, I would say. But across the board, Nile is just consistently awesome. Their blend of kind of just like flat out old school death metal, but also technical death metal, because it kind of has a give and take between the two. I mean, it's always going to be technical with George Callias behind the kit, because the man has just unbelievable ability, and why would you want to hold him back? But also Carl Sanders, the main guy behind this band, is just a riff maestro, and his ability to weave in all of their amazing themes, because once again, this is all about Egypt, as it always will be with Nile. But somehow he keeps it very fresh. Like, even the stories are engaging. I was actually looking over the liner notes for this, and oh my God, there is a story for every song. And I'm not talking about the lyrics. He wrote out like, oh, this is why this is this song. Like, this is about this, and there's an Egyptian god and a horrible thing happening to a group of people, and everyone gets sand everywhere. And I didn't have the chance to actually read them, because literally the whole thing is like a novel. But I kind of want to after this, just to get a deeper sense of these songs. But honestly, I don't think I need them to have a flat-out appreciation for how absolutely massive this album is.
I'm going to struggle through this review, and it's not because I didn't love it. It's because I loved every single minute of this. Like, I hate to give that away right up front, but this record rules. Now, right off the bat, there are things that I come to expect from Nile when I listen to any record that they have, and that would be blazing speed, extreme precision, drum work of a god himself, George Callias. I don't know how that man does what he does, and I've seen it live several times now, and I still don't get it. I've shaken his hand, and I tell you what, when I shook his hand, I was expecting there to be some transference of talent or magic or something, and I shook his hand, and he was awesome, and I was still just me. Anyway.
Well, there was probably an awkward erection on your part, but
not as awkward as there was listening to this album, that's for sure. The first track, Stelae of Vultures, Stelae, I don't know. Words.
They don't travel in flocks. They travel
yep.
in sleighs.
Yep. Big nasty riffs and the insanity of George Callias, and that's pretty much what the opening track is. Faster than fast, extremely tight.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how this band can get any tighter than they already have been, but it's this. This is like a whole new level. There is nothing out of place. There is no transition that doesn't flow masterfully. It's and that's it.
It's really kind of hard to describe, but I mean, like, breaking it down, it has all the tropes that Nile does well, especially in this first half. And when we get to the second half actually opens up a lot more. But this first half is just everything you like about Nile done exceedingly well. The transitions, I mean, again, the riff work from Carl is just absolutely insane. The vocal dynamics between, everyone and Carl, but namely Brian Kingsland, who is kind of taken over the, more clear roar that, Dallas did for a while. Their trade-offs are awesome because, man, Carl still has these just deep, just otherworldly gurgles. Like, they come straight from the underworld that awaits us all, I'm reasonably sure. But with Kingsland, and I believe it is Kingsland, it could be Zach, but I'm reasonably sure it's Kingsland that's doing a majority of that kind of like mid-range roar. It's the cadences and how they flow on top of the music and the riffs. There's a lot of like contrasting rhythms where the vocals will have a more slow, deliberate pace, and then the riff underneath is just blazing fast because the picking speed on here is like hummingbird wings. Or for a more Egyptian reference, the wings of like a scarab. That works maybe a little bit better here. But I love all the constant shifts back and forth in terms of the vocals. I really couldn't pick out the other two guys' vocals, but it doesn't matter because often they will come together as some mighty demonic roar. You also have like clean vocals that pop up and haunting choirs. And that adds like so much atmosphere and gravitas, especially when you get down to these more epic sections that start popping up towards the end of the album. But underneath that is the just rhythmic marvel that is George Callias doing God knows what. Like, I could not begin to explain what all he does. I could probably decipher hieroglyphics before I could tell you exactly what George Callias is doing, but I know that his blast beats are smooth, his transitions are nuts, his turnovers are blazing fast. And one thing I guess I could probably say is it's kind of the measures he does, because he will extend out a fill over a riff to the point where like it becomes like almost an entire measure of the song.
Yeah.
And how he comes back into these, I think, is just kind of remarkable. He is machine-like precise, but he's also very smooth too.
And very like loosey-goosey, and I realize that's also crazy to say, but like it felt very natural, especially in his transitions. Every time he transitions, it's like its own separate beat, and it doesn't reappear. It's just there to kind of spice up the transition. Like in songs like Naquadah 2, Enter the Golden Age, and Overlords of the Black Earth, he does this really cool thing where he deviates out of the blast and almost out of the groove and builds like these little jazzy, kind of bouncy, swingy grooves that really don't appear anywhere else in the record, and it's a lot of like open, like hi-hat and ride bell grooves. Again, just the way he weaves in and out of these songs between incredibly syncopated grooves or blast parts or whatnot, and then to throw in something jazzy, just, I don't know, kind of speaks to what this man is as a drummer.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing just to hear like what he does with empty space too.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are sections where it does really slow down, but it's his accents and like a clever fill that pops up in there. Like even when it gets down to what I would call a Sahara swing, and there's like this little fun little rhythms and the very Middle Eastern melodies that pop up in here, because if they didn't, I would wonder if I was listening to a Nile album. But it's amazing how he moves the songs along and then allows just this kind of open field of possibilities for Carl to riff over. And my God, the riff work on here is insanely tight. I really enjoyed Vile Melodic Rites. I thought it was a solid album. I didn't really sense there were a lot of growing pains on it, but this album is tighter, it's meaner, it's darker, especially when you get down to the back half. Everything kind of slows down a little bit. Like this whole back half of the album after the interlude, the Pentagramathion of Nephron Ka, good thing they referenced Nephron Ka again, pretty much sounds like it's High Noon in Giza, and yeah, it's got that cool desert vibe. very pretty acoustic play.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's in a guitar or in an oud. Either way, it sounds awesome. And then you get into Overlord, the Black Earth, and man, this is where the album, I think, really just kind of takes off. Not only does it get more brutal and dark, it slows down, which Nile is not really known to do. But how they kind of use these big open spaces to create some very like dynamic and just huge standout songs, I think is probably the thing that really stood out to me on this album.
Pretty much everything after the interlude just gets particularly gross and heavy and nasty. Under the Curse of the One God has got to be, I think, one of the heaviest, stankiest, nastiest things that Nile possibly has ever written. And I realize that that is a bold statement, but I'm not joking. The breakdown on that song in particular has this bendy riff to it that is not only catchy, but it's just like you can feel the crushing weight. It's like getting buried in sand, I guess, so to speak.
It's full of bugs.
Yeah,
corpses.
it's just, the weight of it is just incredible, and the vocals are particularly demonic. I'm gonna have a rough time saying anything but stanky and nasty. I'm not even really sure that my face has fully returned out of the ugh.
I thought it always looked that way.
Because, well, nah.
Under the Curse of the One God is particularly menacing, and I would say like this is one of the first songs that I just felt like it just sounds like it is pure evil. Ancient Egyptian evil. The way that menacing, lurching riff comes out, like it feels like it is just a undead mummy hand reaching out to like just, I don't know, rip your throat out or something. I don't know what mummies do. But how that song constantly just kind of ebbs between that and like just these tight, thrashy riffs. It is just a intense, sinister, menacing song. But as this album went on, towards the end, you have two of the longer tracks, True Gods of the Desert and the title track. Both of these songs combined to make up for almost like 16 minutes of the album. And what this band does with this huge open space in terms of the songs, I think is pretty damn awesome, especially True Gods of the Desert, which honestly, it strips back almost all the technical elements.
Yep.
It becomes more centered on big riffs that repeat. They're not technical or flashy. They are just big and heavy. It's more about the groove. It's more about the atmosphere. And they constantly repeat these riffs and build on them. Granted, the bridge gets a little bit blasty on that song, but only for a second before settling back in. And honestly, like I was kind of shocked by this track because, you know, very rarely do you get like a super slow Nile track. Like generally they're just kind of holding back a little bit, just we're going to speed up here in a minute. But this song stays slow and brooding for almost the entire song. And the fact that, again, this one just kind of strips back the veneer of like technical wizardry just to deliver almost like a fucking crowbar riff. And in a way, it is still kind of technical just in terms of like the transitions, the songwriting. But it's these songs in particular that you can really get like a scope of the album, like how huge it sounds. And that is also large in part to Mark Lewis, who mixed and mastered this, and he did a great job on here.
Yeah, I have no complaints actually in the mixing department. I thought in the beginning of the record the drums seemed a little out front, but it's also George Colias, and I don't care that his drums are out front because what better drummer in the world, in my opinion, to put out front than George Colias. Another thing I liked about True Gods of the Desert is that when that riff starts, it's almost got like a classic heavy metal vibe to it. It's very, I don't know, almost bright. It's weird.
Bright like the fucking Sahara sun beating down on you.
I guess, but like it seems just more playful. And then it eventually cuts into this big like start-stop chuggy riff that is amazing. But it did have a very classic heavy metal feel, and some of the leads in that song too almost took on like a thrashy vibe.
The lead work in here I think is as fantastic as the riff work, and you know, once again showcases Carl's ability to just kind of weave melody into all this intensity, because this is just balls out crazy for almost like 95% of this.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 95 because the slower songs are a little bit longer, because even the title track, while it definitely is a little bit more up-tempo than True Gods of the Desert, it still has a lot more of these like slow brooding sections. And yeah, towards the back half of this album gets like a case that bends, and it's an awesome case. Those riffs in particular are just giant standouts.
Doctrine of Last Things, that's like a Morbid Angel riff straight out of the gate. You can tell where the influences lie with that one. Just absolutely gross. Holy shit were the first 2 words I wrote for this song. It's catchy. It's got more of those bendy riffs in it and more, again, of those demonic vocals. I swear to you that in the last couple songs of this, Satan comes out of hell and drags the band in, and then they do their vocal takes in hell.
Honestly, yeah, that is kind of the vibe on this album as a whole, because the front half, again, blistering, fast, aggressive as hell, and again, technical. It's just mind-numbing how crazy all these riffs are. Like, I'm pretty sure that Carl melted his fretboard playing all this stuff. But the second half, it feels way more dark and menacing. Closes off with this brilliant instrumental Lament for the Destruction of Time, which has these huge syncopated chugs and just lush atmosphere. There's like haunting, wailing vocals in the background. Yeah. So I guess it's still an instrumental. It doesn't sound like she's saying anything. Nile has their way to inject atmosphere and stuff and make things sound epic, but also keep the brutality. And I think they do it a little bit better on here than they did on the last one. Last one, I still think it was awesome. I feel like this one is like less theatrics. Like there feels like there's like less setup and like, yes, we're in the desert and we're on the set of The Mummy. Like the first 2, because that third one really wasn't that good. This one is less about the setup. In fact, the atmospheric sections don't last as long before getting to the meat of the song, and a lot of the atmosphere is woven into the songs themselves. So there aren't like any like breaks or anything on here to just kind of set up anything. It's already just there. And I mean, at this point, I really don't need like that much setup for Nile, because I kind of know,
right,
you know, the themes and the atmosphere, and I know it's going to be injected into the song. So I think they did a wise job of just like kind of getting to the main part of the songs and making sure there are just good anchor riffs to return to. That's another thing I like about this. As technical and just batshit crazy as this album gets, they like to return to anchor riffs, harmonize them, throw a lead on top. Their version of gang vocals, which is every ogre groaning at you at the same time. I love it. It's absolutely amazing. And for the life of me, I can't find anything wrong with this. Like, at a certain point, I thought, I was like, well, maybe it's like a little bit too technical. And then the back half of the album came along. I was like, wow, they showed a lot of restraint there.
Right.
And just delivered killer riff after killer riff. There goes my complaint. Man, it's too Egyptian? That's nonsense. I can't say that. George is drumming too fast? No, that's dumb too. Carl is... Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Carl. Carl's awesome. Yeah, I don't have any complaints. This is absolutely awesome. I mean, one complaint I could make is kind of a complaint I could make on any Nile album, because there's always one song that is just absolutely ridiculously long when it comes down to the song title. And that was the first single, I believe, with Chapter for not being hung upside down on a stake in the underworld and made to eat feces by the 4 apes. That's what we get for killing Harambe. The title itself is probably longer than the actual song, because I think the song itself is under 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And I feel like it took me 4 minutes to actually say that song title. But it's an interesting visual, at least. I mean, if that's the underworld that awaits us, then, man, I would like some other options, because I don't want, like, gorilla poo hurled at my face.
No, maybe it's time to make some changes in life. I have to really pick it up here. I think I'm going to start holding doors for people again or something.
That's
I
good.
don't know. Yeah. It should keep me out of it. Yeah, I don't have any complaints either. I really don't. Even if I really dug deep to find something, I don't think I could find it. You know, initially when I thought the drums were a little bit too loud, but then it's George Callias and I don't care. Man, I'm going to give this record 4.5 stars, but please know that it is ever so close to 5, like 4 7/8, like 4.9999 Nile. It kicks in the door. It is unrelenting in both speed and riffs and groove and heaviness. George Callias is the man. Carl Sanders is an absolute beast. The band is tight. The songs go from being fast to being bone-crushingly heavy, and I'm probably going to listen to it every day for the rest of my life. It's almost a 5. Like, we are right there. There's 4.5, and then there's where I'm at, and then there's 5. It's almost there. This record rules.
I am at a 4.5 to 4 7/8, 4 9/10. God, it's close. Yeah, this is man, like a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Like I didn't think it was going to be bad, but I was kind of unsure. Like, you know, more lineup changes. You know, the first single was an entire sentence, which was really cool. But I was like, all right, that sounds like Nile. And then as this album went on, it became just larger than life. Like I haven't felt this like level of like scope to a Nile album in a while. This thing is just absolutely monstrous, and I like the fact that it keeps getting more interesting as you listen to it as the album goes on. It really opens up with these like longer, slower tracks. The fact that they kind of pump the brakes on technicality just to deliver some solid riffs, some great atmosphere. Everything about this album is awesome. I even dig the production. Yeah, the drums are a little forward, but it's fine because it's George Calais, and everything on here still has a nice space to play in. Carl's riff work is as tight as ever. I actually started following him on Facebook during the pandemic, and a lot of his stuff was pretty much just say, hey, you have this time to practice, 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 practice. Apparently, he follows his own advice a lot because this, I think, is even tighter than the last album, to the point where I'd say this sounds like 5 years worth of effort and fine-tuning on an album. It's absolutely amazing. If you're a longtime Nile fan, I'm pretty sure you're going to love it. If you don't, I don't know. I got some serious questions there. But yeah, this is Nile doing what Nile does on just an absolutely grand scale. Check this out. This is an absolute beast, and way to complicate my year-end list.
Yeah, no shit.
Oh my God. But yeah, no, I suppose I wouldn't have it any other way.
No.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel. Up in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats too, so if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And as always, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal. Album reviews, discography rankings, discussion panels, discussion topics. Is it metal, is it not metal? States of metal, 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 all the time. That's what we do here at Thralls of Metal, and we do it because of you guys. Thank you to everyone that has liked and supported us along the way, to all of our subscribers, our friends, our family, what have you. It's been amazing to watch this channel grow, and it seems to be doing so at a pretty fast rate these days, and we appreciate it. We couldn't be more thankful for everybody that helps make Thralls of Metal a living, breathing entity. We appreciate you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and yeah, tons of content coming your way. So one more big thank you because of all of your rulage, and we will catch you later.